Good morning. It's 8:30 here in the UK. I'm saying that because I'm joined today by Jack Chandler, who is going to, unfortunately, we've been chatting for nearly 40 minutes, and unfortunately, Jack has to leave in about 10 minutes for an appointment, which is very sad, but we will get her back next week, and all will be revealed. You will see her in the flesh from Europe. And so an hour ahead, Jack writes crime and is about to come out with a romantic fantasy, a romantasy, which I understand is all the rage these days. I don't write it. I sound very old. Understand is all of the rage these days. But we're here today to talk about, well, I will be talking about, Jack will chip in for the next 10 minutes, about ideas. So you often start as you do with Googling something. Other search engines are available. So I made some notes. So I Googled how do writers get ideas, and the lovely AI came back with everyday observations, personal experiences, dreams, and consuming media like books and news. So I'd say TV and film as well. Inspiration often sparks from asking what if, and writers are very much what if questions. Conducting research, so these are all ticks so far. Exploring emotions or observing people, biggie, which are then developed through brainstorming, and some say monitoring their bank statements. That's a little weird. So I don't know where that came from. Obviously, one person out of the whole universe said that they monitor their bank statements when they get ideas. But there we go. So I've always loved reading, but in my early years, I didn't think that it was something that writing would be something I could do as a career. And I'm still working on that, as I know Jack from something she's just told me agrees. I came to writing seriously at the grand age of 38 and thought I had no experience to write. I'd read a relatively normal, some might say boring, upbringing, but I'd watched a lot of TV and films. That said, most stories are about character. The protagonist, the good guy, the antagonist is the bad guy, has a problem, and by the end of the story, they need to solve it. The likes of Dame Barbara Cartland wrote 700 plus books. So how did she come up with 700 plus ideas? She had a winning formula. Boy meets girl, or rather girl meets boy. There's something between them. They can't get together. By the end, you know they're going to get together. AKA Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story. Those two are very interlinked. Pride and Prejudice, and every Mills and Boon novel. Some say there are only 7 plots. Others say up to 39. This is something else I Googled. But I'm here to talk about ideas, not plots. So next week, we'll be talking about plotting, not plotting and pantsing and plotting. I'm delighted that Jack is a plotter. And I say we had a bit of a chat about this before the recording. That Jack is a pantser, and I say I'm a plotter. I say I'm a plantser, so I plot a bit and then go with it. 2 out of the 3 authors booked so far for next week are pantsers, so it will be. I was hoping we had at least one plotter, so we'll be keeping that for next week when we'll be discussing plotting and pantsing. Pantsing being getting an idea and flying by the seat of the pants. Then the 16th of March, we'll be discussing plots in more detail. So how do you get ideas? I'm going to throw that over to Jack because I'm going to be talking more about how to get ideas. So I'm very conscious that Jack has to go in a minute. So I'm just looking at your covers you've sent me. So you've got 4 Jack Chandler crime novels so far?
I've got 2 books out there
Okay.
that are available. One of them is an audiobook everywhere in the world. The others are restricted to Amazon because I haven't yet got myself sorted enough get them to draft to digital and get them out there in the wild.
Okay.
And I've got a romantasy coming out, and then on my website, there's a free novel in the series.
Okay.
It works as a prequel. So
Okay.
effectively, I've got 3 books out in the world and one coming.
Right. So which is the one? Which is the three are three in a series. The safe. Which order are they?
Yeah, so ideally, people read Ripped Into first,
Okay.
which
That's
is,
from your website.
yes.
Hmm.
Then they go to my website and they find Safe, and then they read that.
Right.
Now, really, as people, Safe can be read anywhere, but if you read it after Ripped Into, you already know the main characters. And it also introduces you to a couple of characters that then show up in the second book, 13 Chances.
Ah. So how long is Ripped Into? Because you called it a novel, but I know a lot of reader magnets, if people say sign up to newsletters, then they get sent a sort of shortish story that relates to the
Yeah, no, Ripped Into is a full novel, but that's the one that's on Amazon. Safe is the one on my website. It's only 15,000. It's a
okay.
novella.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
story and a prequel, and it shows you how 2 of the main characters have met each other when they were much younger.
Okay. And you were saying earlier on before we came on recording that you met a parcel a courier a delivery chap who inspired part of, I don't know whether did that inspire the whole story or you just
The,
included it.
yeah, the story had already mostly been written. It gave me an insight into the character that I was writing, though, and this is for the romantasy book that's due out in March, which is The
Okay.
Darkness of Aisu.
Right.
And what it was he delivered the sofa beds, lovely man,
Mm.
and we had a little chat. And I noticed that around his bicep on one arm there were I would say between 15 and 20 concentric circles, and there were scars, just and perfectly in alignment, very thin,
Mm.
um, very very tight, but they were just scars around his bicep. And I'm a very curious person, so I had to ask him, and I asked him, where on earth he got this from, because it's hard to imagine. And he just said to me that not everybody's childhood is as it should be.
Mm.
And so the book itself is dedicated to the children whose childhoods were not as they should be.
Wow.
And I gave those scars to my character, my main character in the book, Isu. But in the end, it ended up on the cutting room floor. It was a deleted scene.
Mm.
Um, but it gave me some insight into his character and how he got them. The way it's sort of a medieval world. It's very low fantasy, this book, but it's a medieval world, and he had went through a very brutal training process. And the way he got them was they wanted to train him to be equally as good in his left hand as he is in his right hand.
Right.
So they wrapped wire around the bicep. And if he tensed the muscle, of course, the skin would split.
Mm.
And that's how I gave the scars to my character. But like I say, that scene isn't actually in the book.
No. But I
Um,
think you mentioned to me about an author's note. So you included this in the
yeah,
author's note that's how.
because I wanted the dedication to also make sense.
Mm.
But I honestly, I don't even know this man's name, but I just want the sofa bed guy to be remembered in some
Yeah,
way.
yeah. So how did it not fin? Because yes, this is talking about how you get ideas, but not every idea. It's a bit like research. You get so much research, and if you cram it all into a book, it then becomes fact heavy. Did you find that it just wasn't?
Either you've frozen or I have.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. You said if you cram every research,
Yeah,
then
cram all your research into a book, then it becomes sort of too fact heavy. Was
yeah,
there a reason? Obviously, it was very important to you to have that scene in it. What
yeah.
was what was your reason for not including it? Did it
because
just not fit?
it didn't fit. It would have been forced in there.
Right.
In it wasn't relevant to the plot.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a tight writer. If it's not relevant, then it has to come out. But I can still know it, and it still helps me. It helps me form the character and how they develop.
Was he your main character in the book?
Yes, his
Okay.
name's Killian, and yeah, he's the main character. And then you've got the female main character because it's romance. So
Oh, of course, yes. Romanticy. So is this the first in a series? Because you've written the three crime series.
yeah,
Will this
well,
be the first? So perhaps it come back? Because
so
obviously, if there's a romance in it, she would obviously know that this has happened to him.
yes, so the thriller series is not yet finished. I've written already. I'm hoping to get the third book in the thriller series out this summer and the fourth book next year. And the first drafts are written for both of those, which was nice because it allowed me to pepper Easter eggs into the earlier books.
Nice. Yeah.
But with this, at the moment, it's a standalone. I don't have any ideas for a sequel, but
Mm,
there's one character whose story isn't resolved.
right.
And I wouldn't go back to Killian as the main character because I want his romance to be over.
Yeah.
I don't want to drag it on, and I want the readers to imagine how they ended up, where they ended up, and how it went, because
Sure.
they've got a rocky road ahead of them. But there's one character who disappears at some point in the book, and his future isn't yet known. So if I did do a series, it would be him moving on. So the
Right.
same world, same medieval type world,
Mm,
but a different main character, but a character who was at least in the first book.
right. I love that. There's a collection of short stories. We were talking about short stories before this, and I that's what I tend to read for pleasure because editing is my day job. I don't read novels because I can't switch the editor's hat off. And but I love reading short stories and writing short stories. And there's a collection by Kate Atkinson who wrote the I can't remember his name now. Jackson Brodie detective books. When will there be good news and so on, and a couple of standalones before that. And but her third book before the Jackson Brodie was not the end of the world, and there was a character in that. I can't remember which way round it was, but one of the stories has a car crash, and there's a policeman and the female driver of the car, and then whether we've already, I think we meet her again later, and it's lovely because we know a bit about her already, and then we get to see who she actually was in a later story. So I love that. And in fact, I used to be in a writing group in Northampton called Northampton Writers Group, and they had the judge the short story H.E. Bates short story competition held that, and one year we had Katie Ford, the romance women's fiction author, and I said to her because there was a book of hers I loved, and I can't remember the name now, but it was about I love books about writing, and it was about a lady who was made redundant, bookshop closed, and she set up a book festival. And but there was I can't remember her name, and she was the main character, but she had a sidekick called Monica, who I loved. And I said to Katie, would she write a story about where Monica was the main character? And she said, I liked Monica as well, and maybe I will. And I don't know whether she did or not. I'm not sure, but I love that. I love that idea that you get to know a little bit about a character, and then they come back in their own right. I think that's fabulous.
I have a similar thing in my detective series. The main character is named Finn, and his best friend is George.
Right.
And a lot of people asking me about George's background because you don't know it. I
Yeah,
know it,
yeah, yeah.
but it never comes up. And actually, Finn doesn't know it either.
Mm.
It's he plays his cards very close to his chest, does George. And I've had people ask me for a book on him, which they're not going to get. But
Oh,
bless them for asking.
right.
I'm afraid I have to go.
Yeah,
I'm so
no, that's
sorry.
okay. No, we had a lovely chat beforehand. So I'm delighted that you're going to be back next week.
Yeah,
And we will do an author spotlight for you as well, which will go up on YouTube at some point.
that'd
Um,
be lovely.
so I'll be chatting with you behind the scenes before next week, and then we'll sort out a date for a spotlight, and that will go up. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you
Nice
so much.
to
I've
meet
got
you. Okay,
lovely to meet
no
you.
problem. All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Well, that was Jack Chandler, the fabulous Jack Chandler from Europe. So she's now ahead and had a 10 o'clock appointment, unfortunately. But anyway, we were here to talk about writing, so it was a lovely slight diversion. So I won't go back through the beginning bit because you can see that at the beginning of the recording. But I left off before Jack and I chatted about her books and how she got her idea from the courier. My question was, so how do you get your ideas? So my Google search was write. Everyday observations, personal experiences, dreams, and consuming media like books and news. So some ideas do come to writers in dreams. I suppose I wouldn't say I don't, but it's not a form that I often have. Some writers would rely on inspiration coming to them at night when they'd hit a brick wall. And yes, the proverbial writer's block does exist. Everyday observations. Always carry a notebook with you. I have a phone. I do have a notebook and 2 pens in each pocket. Certainly when I'm dog walking, because invariably I get ideas and then I think, oh, I've got nothing to write it on. So then I have to repeat the idea to myself. And then invariably you meet another dog walker, you get chatting, and where did that idea go? So always have a notebook and 2 pens in case one of them runs out, or a pencil if you prefer a pencil. Pencils don't run out, but leads break, so have 2 pencils with you. And so yes, carry a notebook with you, or your phone, so you can record something that strikes you, whether it's something you've overheard, the way a person looks, talks, or walks. Personal experiences. Use places you've been to as inspiration. They don't have to be exotic. Lots of stories take place in ordinary location. And then the news. The news was mentioned. There's a British newspaper I often buy called The Eye. It's just a little red eye on a cream background, which is published by The Independent. And on, I think it's page 2 or 3, from the inside cover, they have little squares. I should have got one to hand for you, but they have little squares of summaries of stories. And then underneath some of them, that will be it. Maybe something that happened at a zoo, or I don't know, an animal turned 100 or something. And then some of them will say turn to page 25. So then it'll be a little summary of the story. And if you want to know more, then you turn to page 25. So quite often when I've been teaching, I've torn out that page and literally just photocopied that page, or that part of the page, and given it to my learners, because they learn, they don't study, so they're not students. And then they've picked one and written from that. So it doesn't need to take much. Then yes, there are 100 words maximum, and they often make great stories. For all of these, use the what if. We mentioned about what if earlier on. So what if this happened instead of that? So you can change it, because quite often, obviously, for lockdown, the C word, a lot of people were then debating over lockdown, where Zoom exploded. I think it was Skype years before that. And I do WI talks where I talk about my writing journey. You see all my books, or some of my books behind me, they're not all there. And I do diaries, dated diaries as well. And I mention that I say what if, and you have to come up with different ideas. And in one of I used two stories from my shorts collection, which are just over 500 words. One called Under, so I start with that, and then at the end I read Over, and it has a natural ending then. Well, having over-egged today's prompt, this little ditty is over, because any more would be overkill, wouldn't it? And that's a good point to end on. And then I got the idea from a single word. So this is something I made earlier, which this is something I've used, get straightened further towards the camera. It's called a word web. And there are variations of it, but this is the one I use. And you'll see hand in the middle. And then you could have what an example I give back in the day is hand bag. So you could go hand in the middle and then up to bag there. And then, so we've got handbag, and then you could go off up there to Margaret Thatcher, because she was always well known for having her black handbag with her. And then from Margaret Thatcher, you could have anything. And then obviously you can create other stalks or longer pieces of paper, or have a bigger piece of paper. So that's a word web, and that literally is from one word. So for those two stories, I used the words under and over. And I got a dictionary, and I wrote down all the words that started with under. So understand, underhand. So I say underhand, and then I looked that up in the explanation in the dictionary, and apparently it's a form of not. And then I'll let you read I don't think you'll get it in the sample, but the shorts, if you do buy the shorts collection, download it, buy the paperback, you can read the stories in their entirety. They're just over 500 words. So you can literally get just a word. I do a series of writer's block workbooks. You'll see the individual ones behind me. And they're all designed so they last a year. So they're 3 prompts every day. So you'll see day, what have we got there? 111, 112 on this side, and then underneath that on the second half is tip of the week. So they're all designed so each day, and they obviously start week 1, day 1, and go up to week 52, day 366 for a leap year. And they have, so each book has a different series of prompts. Oh, have a reminder, thank you, reminder. So in the first, I love sentence starts, and I was chatting to Jack before we recorded about imagination and the fact that we both have good imaginations. Thankfully, we're very lucky. But I used to run a workshop, a writing group.
From reminders due today.
Thank you. I used to run a workshop from my home in Northampton for friends in the area, and every other week I'd set a task and we'd write on the spot, and then the weeks in between we'd have a critique night. So they'd either bring back the whatever was written that week. We'd write for 10 or 15 minutes and then read it out. So everybody would take turns to read out whatever they'd written, and we'd all be very nice to each other because they've literally just written it on the spot. And there was a lady called Denny who I met in the ladies at Oundle Literary Festival, as you do, half an hour away from Northampton. It turns out we live 2 streets away. And you could put that in the book, but often, as Mark Twain said, truth is stranger than fiction. So she lived literally actually a road and a half away from me. And I used to walk, so I had a dog at the time, still have a different dog, and used to walk her home at night, and we'd be talking about the evening and imagination and so on. And we got to a corner just before her house, and I said and she was an artist, so I said all about a wall of water coming around the corner, and she said, oh no, I can't picture that at all. And Jack Chandler, who joined me earlier on for this session, said that she'd met a couple of people who couldn't picture when they read. They can't picture what they're reading, which I think is quite sad, because I think part of reading is that you imagine what's happening, and the uproar that took place from dedicated Lee Child, I think you know what I was going to say, Lee Child fans, when Tom Cruise, who I thought made a really good Jack Reacher, but I do prefer Alan Ritchson as the big beefy, slightly goofy Jack Reacher. So anyway, Denny, who I used to walk home, her least favourite was sentence starts, but they do help. So this one, so we've got week 16. This is the first workbook. The first day, there are 3 per day. So the day 1 and day 4 are first person. Day 2 and day 5 are second person, so you. Then day 3 and day 6 are third person, and day 7 of a week is any point of view. So the any points of view are, this is day 112 in the first writer's block workbook, is not realizing how precious the cargo, ... and then you follow on from that. And the next one is facing it for the first or last time, and then ... and then trailing behind observing ... So you can use I, you, he, she, they, character's name. And then there's a tip. This one is using exclamation marks, which I just say one when they're needed. If you just have an exclamation mark, if someone's reading it on the page, you then don't need he shouted. So there's a tip for every week. So there's 52 tips in this book. And then the second one, I was talking about single words. The second volume is random keywords. So it works the same, where you have 3 sets per day, but they're a set of 5. So we've got on day 168, we've got for the first set. So if you use 1 set a day, the book would last you 3 years. If you use 3 sets, then obviously it'll last you a year. So we've got bottle, wish, tricky, learn, and given. So the idea is that you put those in whatever you're writing. It could be a short story, it could lead to a novel, it could just be a scene, it could be a poem, or whatever you want to do, just those. And then the next set is whisper, voice, earlier, sticker, and plate. That's the second one. And then the third one is eventful, mills, that's MILLS, as in windmills, spending, delighted, and cauldron, as in witch's cauldron. So that would be an interesting piece if you choose that one. So you can, this is recorded, so you can rewind and write those down, fill in the word web. I'll put a link to a word web. You can download the word web from this episode's page. And then the third one, the third book, so these are all ones I've just come up with. I've either had the news on. I tend to go non-fiction, so I'm not picking up somebody else's, so a drama on TV or something, I'm not picking up somebody else's writing. So it tends to be a documentary or the news, or adverts. So again, that's written, but there'll be odd words. So these will generally be ideas that have come to me when I'm listening to something non-fiction. And then the third one is on day 1 you've got character, day 2 you've got 3 objects, location or environment, day 3 then you've got timing, and then you've got plot, something random, and a change. So day 7 of each week is change something you've done already, and that is volume 3. So there are 3 per day. And then volume 4, that's actually my second bestseller, although a lot of people buy book 1 because it's volume 1 and then work their way through. But if I'm doing don't say a WI and somebody comes up to me and says, which one would you recommend? I say the 4th one. It depends. If somebody's beginning, then I think having this one is probably perhaps too complicated, but there was a lady in the WI last week whose daughter was on the 3rd year of a degree course, of a creative writing course at a Welsh university, and she bought volumes 1 and 4, because volume 4 in every day you've got, so again 3 sets per day, you've got 2 characters, a trait, a location, an object, and dilemma. So in day 22, which is week 4, you've got this is the first one of 3, boat worker, publican, one of them is jolly, they're in Algeria. The object is a guide dog, and the dilemma is one of them is late for a flight. So that's interesting. So maybe they're going to Algiers, or they're there and coming home. And then the next one is a car welder, gardener. One of them is appalled, which is just sort of shocked, horrified, disgusted. That's probably closest. They're in a pet shop. One of them's in a pet shop. A beer glass, and making a big mistake. So maybe one's going to buy a pet for somebody and it's not, it doesn't work out. And then there are more. So again, you can rewind that, write them down, and use them to your heart's content. And then volume 5, this is volumes 1 to 4, but there is a volume 5 as well, and that's more sentence starts. So I'm very lucky in that I can come up with so many different ideas. And there's one, I'll come back to that in a second. But no, I won't. I'll go to what if in a minute. Just go back to my script, which does help. So I've then got, it doesn't take much to be inspired. For me, a single word can provide inspiration. So I've shown you the word web. I've talked about my 4-5 workbooks. And another way I get Google alerts, which then tells me about, I have a Google alert for Morgane Bailey, which is my name, and Morgane Bailey, which a lot of people think I am. So I do make a big point of being Morgan with an E, because if you Google Morgan with an E, then you get me. And then I also get various newsletters including ones from Quora, Quora, because that has a daily digest of several topics that people are talking about. And you can go on Quora, you can go on Reddit, that's another good one, where people are talking about various subjects. So I get Quora. I should sign up to Reddit actually, because then I get more. And so I have on my email, I have an ideas folder. So every day I get BookBub, I get Digital Book Today. You get a lot of free books from Digital Book Today, very good site, and paid ones as well. And I have advertised on that and done quite well. So Quora, Reddit, BookBub, Digital Book Today. They're 4 newsletters I get in, and they go straight into my ideas folder. Now with the Digital Book Today and BookBub, they're obviously advertising books. So you have to be a bit more careful where you're looking at other people's plots. But as I've said earlier on, there are only between 7 and 39 plots. Boy Meets Girl, as I mentioned, Romeo and Juliet, Pride and Prejudice, West Side Story, they're all boy meets girl. They don't get on for whatever reason, or they can't be together for whatever reason. In the books like Pride and Prejudice could be a class, different classes, or different heritage backgrounds where they can't be together, and the reader wants them to be together. And we like to think that in a romance, certainly, that in a tragedy, there is my favourite film is called Stranger Than Fiction, starring Will Ferrell, and he's one of his very rare straight roles, serious roles, where he's not larking around. And it's got so many people, Emma Thompson, Dustin Hoffman, Queen Latifah, fantastic novel, Stranger Than Fiction. I'm going to jot that down, because so I can mention it on their page to watch the movie Stranger Than Fiction. I have several copies of it on DVD because I keep lending it to people, and I never get them back, or I give them to people. So and say you have to watch the film Stranger Than Fiction, because it's all about a chap who, I'm not going to give away much of the plot, but it's about a writer and a character. And then other ideas are book inscriptions, pictures of people and places. So when you're writing a character, we will have a week on characters, a session on characters. When it's always a good idea. You may have them in your head, but to find, you only have to search for, say, woman, dark hair, 40s, and then find a character on Google Images, for instance, or Pinterest, where you have somebody who looks like your character. And then you can download it and print it off, right click, save as photo, save as picture, and then be reminded of what your character looks like. And locations. I've done workshops, ideas and inspiration, where you have 2 pictures, or I give everybody maybe a dozen pictures of characters, a dozen pictures of locations, and then a form for them to fill in. So they analyze the character, who they are, how tall they are, what they do for work, and so on and so forth. So you can build a character. So we'll talk more about characters and locations in later episodes. But pictures are a great way of getting ideas. And really, if I said to you, Denzel Washington, you wouldn't necessarily think of the words, the two names, but you would picture him. So we tend to work in pictures. So they work really well for ideas. Now you may worry, because a lot of people worry about the blank page and getting ideas, about how long a story has to be. It really doesn't matter. In my flashes, they start at about 20 words. I used to run on my blog, which is Morgan Bailey, morganbailey.wordpress.com. And I used to do it's a page in the reading section of my blog. Used to do 6 words, invite people to send in 6 words. I should get it back up again, actually, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading them. People enjoyed writing them. 6-word stories. The most famous is Ernest Hemingway's For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn. And a lot of people go, oh, that's really sad. But I like to think that it was such a big bonny baby that the shoes were already too small by the time the baby was born, trying to be half glass full. So ideas are everywhere. I have only touched on it. I can go on it for longer, and I'm sure that we will have other sessions, because I will be repeating each theme. So we are starting with ideas. I'm going to mention the ones that are coming up. So Jack Chandler will be joining us next week for plotting versus pantsing. That's Monday the 23rd of February at 9 a.m. UK time, so 10 a.m. in Europe. And then the following weeks, Monday the 2nd of March, will be characters. Then and I will say, actually, let me do this slightly differently, because so ideas. So plotting versus pantsing is next week. So we'll have Alan Meredith, David Wake, and John Lynch. Now I know Alan and John are pantsers, so they get an idea and fly by the seat of their pants. David Wake, I haven't asked yet. I think he's somewhere in between. He's a bit like me. He's a plantser, where he does put some, because we've had a couple of sessions with David, who was one of our moderators from 25th of January all day. And I think, like me, he's a plantser. So he does get an idea, he writes some notes and then goes with it, but we'll find out next week. And then Jack Chandler, who you met briefly this morning, who is a plotter. So it's good that we've got some of each. And then Monday the 2nd, we've got, that will be at 10 o'clock, is So Far with myself and Gemma Owen Kendall. We're talking about characters. And then the 9th of March will be at 11 a.m. UK time, which will be on settings, so locations. So I don't have anybody booked in for that. So if you are a self-published author and would like to talk about settings, go to the Self-Pub Fest website, which is self-pub-fest.co.uk, selfpubfest.co.uk, selfpubfest.com. Will point to it, will direct you to it. So that's the 9th of March is settings. 16th of March, I have myself and Christina Lodger talking about plots. Then the 23rd of March, I was going to be novels versus short stories, but following my discussion with Jack this morning before we recorded, we were talking about description and dialogue. So I'm going to change novels versus short stories, because we can talk about that in mixing genres. So mixing genres on the 30th of March will become mixing genres and formats. So for us who write various formats as well as different genres. So the 23rd of March will be description and dialogue. Then 30th March, mixing genres. So Janet Pywell is booked in for that. So there are 4 more spaces. Esther Chilton will be joining me, and hopefully 4 other authors, on the 6th of April for beginnings. Then 13th of April, Mariette Duncan will be joining me for the saggy middle, what we do when we're stuck in the middle of a book. And then the 20th of April, I don't have anybody booked yet for endings. Then the 27th of April will be David Wake, myself, and hopefully 3 other editors to talk about editing. Then the 4th of May, cover design. So I'd like some cover designers or people who do their own covers, which I do, on the 4th of May. So we have up to 5 people plus myself for that. On the 4th of May, 11th of May, Paula Harmon and myself, and hopefully 3 others. 4 others. 4 others for the 11th of May. Then the 18th of May, marketing. I don't have anybody booked in for that. So marketeers and people who do their own marketing. I may have Donna Morfitt for that, because she's helping me with marketing. She's setting up book tours, blog tours for that. Then that's the 18th of May, and 25th of May is on publishing. So how we publish. So I may talk about, I'd like to get CV Chowan in for that, actually, because he's traditionally published. I'd also like to talk about why people go self-publishing only, why people go traditionally publishing only, and why people do both, because there are some who are traditionally published and self-published. And then I may have a bit of a break because I need a holiday at some point. And then these will just be on Mondays, so that's okay. I can do it from a sunny location if I get to one. So then June will be probably back at the beginning again on ideas. So I think that's it for now. We've run, I think it was about half an hour, nearly an hour. Anyway, half an hour at least. So it gives you an idea of starting points for ideas. And we will be revisiting it. I'm sure we'll be talking about ideas through the weeks, but we will be revisiting it as a dedicated topic in June. If you're in the Aylesbury locality, or you would like to travel to Aylesbury on the 26th of April, there are still tickets for all the author panels are full. I've got, I think, 30 authors booked in for that. So it's going to be a busy day for the genres panel day. So it's 10 o'clock children's, the same as the 25th, but with different authors in person on the 26th of April in Aylesbury. So tickets are available for that. For the morning only is £10. The afternoon, that's 4 panels. The afternoon only, plus a workshop. The afternoon So that's the workshop, lunchtime workshop Q&A and afternoon panels. It's £10 or £20 for all day, which is, I think, it's very good value, and all profits will be going to 3 local charities: Beacon Lit Literary Festival, Calibre, who record audiobooks. Their head office is actually behind the Holiday Inn in Aylesbury, where it's taking place. And they, a third of the profits go to them, and then a third of the profits go to Haddenham Community Library at nearby Haddenham, one of the villages, who've been very supportive and been very happy to put posters up for the book festival. Sadly, Aylesbury itself, Aylesbury Library, I did ask, and they took a couple of very small flyers to go in their events. So if you have found them via Aylesbury Library, then that's wonderful. But sadly, they didn't want to put a poster up, which is sad. It's very sad, because it is a book festival in their town. But I will try again, and hopefully, anyway, that's another story. So it's been my pleasure. I always love talking about anything to do with writing, and it was lovely having Jack. I was anticipating just being on my own, but it was lovely having Jack Chandler with me and talking about her and her books. So do look out for her spotlight, because that will be happening in the next few weeks, and she will have her own page. I'm going to create her page today on the website, so you can find out more about her. I mentioned earlier on about ideas in various forms, and that I take them often from things I'm listening to, the news and so on. And I mentioned to Jack before we recorded that we had a long conversation, which is sadly why she only had 10 minutes, because I hadn't realised she had to go. But anyway, we'll get her again next week. That I have so many ideas that I could write a story every day and never run out. Very lucky. She said she was the same. And that writers do generally, it helps if you've got a good imagination. But obviously we all start with a blank page, and we often sit there and wonder what to do, hence why you might be watching this. So I have a podcast. I used to have a podcast called Bailey's Writing Tips, which I hope to, and that was over 100 episodes with all sorts of things, had red pen sessions and so on, because my day job is editing, hence the editing fiction. I always get this wrong down there. And so I thought I'd get back into podcasting in an easy way by creating, my favourite statistic is 300 words a day, is 109,500 words a year, or 109,800 words a leap year. So that's 300 words a day. So I created a podcast called 300 Words a Day on Spotify. And as you can see, it's just today, 16th of February, just posted my 200th episode. Now, in the Monday Mini Fests, we will be talking about marketing in the second from last week, which is the 18th of May. And I'm hoping Donna Morfitt, I must speak to her and ask her if she wants to attend, because she's been going to be doing some marketing for me. And blog tours mostly, which I think if you do one thing of marketing, apart from newsletter, do one thing of marketing, blog tours are the way to go, because then you've got quotes to do posters and promo posters and so on. Because often, please go and buy my book, doesn't work. It's why I do author spotlights, so that you get to know the author, you become interested in them, interested in what they've written, and hopefully then go and buy the book. So I've come up with this 300 Words a Day podcast. So if you go on Spotify, I am looking to put it elsewhere, because I'm fairly rubbish at marketing. So nobody knows it exists yet. And yes, I've done 200 episodes. So it's been going since last August. And so the 200th episode was today. And it's just a simple prompt. And this is something actually that's quite useful when you get your idea and you're plotting, which is what we talk about next week. You could even just start with these prompts. So every day, and I'll read out because I can get to it. I'll read out the today's prompt. Podcast done. So today's there we go. 24. I've gone a little bit ahead, so I record ahead, so I do a few at a time. I've done them to the end of the month and scheduled them ahead of time. And this is very apt for a writer. It's episode 200, Monday, the 16th of February, 2026. Your prompt for today is please leave a review. Please leave a review. Things to think about. And this is what I say every single episode. Things to think about. The who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who is asking that you leave a review? Amazon will do. If you buy things from Amazon and you have the Echoes, the smart speakers, that they will say, what did you think? You bought such and such, or your husband bought such and such. What, please leave a review, or what would you rate it? So the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who is asking that you leave a review? If it's for an author, if it's an author for their book, please do. What is the review for, and what review should the character in your story leave? So it could be a product, a car, or anything. Where does the story take place? Does the location matter? When does the story take place? Does the era matter? Why is the character or reader being asked to leave a review? And how does the story continue? There are some more interesting ones than that. So the next one is so tomorrow's will be the front doorbell wasn't working. And the previous one was, so yesterday's was the paw print, as in animal, paw print was odd. See, how my brain works. So there's one of those every day, and I talk about the who, what, where, when, why, how. So when you're plotting a novel, and as I said, we'll be talking about this next week, what you could do is just get an idea and you write down the who, what, where, when, why, and how. So the six, 5 W's and a H. And then if you can answer those questions, then even if that is your plot, it will help you get an idea for the story you want to write. I mentioned earlier on about what if. So a lot of writers will get an idea and then think, oh, what if such and such, or something happens in the news. You get my book, After Jessica, up there, was inspired by an event that happened where a young lady was driving, Maura, the book is dedicated to her, was driving to her work, normal Friday morning, cold morning in January, and her car skidded on some ice, clipped a white van, and then ended up on a railway track with a train coming 2 minutes early. And she had the choice of getting herself out or trying to remove the car and to avoid the train hitting the car. You can guess what happened. And that's the start. And I thought, oh, what if, because I was living on my own at the time, what if her brother then has to come and sort her affairs out, and she's been living a life that he knows nothing about. And so that's the start of the story, of that story. Then the one below it, the 2-in-1, is Hitman Sam. I was saying to Jack before we started the recording that I'd done the first year of a degree course, and part of that was script writing. And I'm not quite sure where the idea came from, but I had this idea of a chap going to a DVD store and hiring DVDs to learn how to be a hitman. And I then, when it came to writing a book, I then decided to pick that one. So that was the first book I wrote was Hitman Sam, after having written loads of short stories. And then I wrote the first of the women's, I always get that wrong, first of the women's, the Serial Data Shopping List, as it was originally when it was traditionally published. And then I went back to crime with this one for the road, which I call My British, and I'm very proud to be that they're all set in Britain, which works for me and against me. Another conversation to be had. So this one, I read this out to Jack before we recorded, and I said panicked at killing. So this is the what if. Panicked at killing a man on a country road, drunk driver Liam Ross buries the body in the woods, and then he gets conscience. When Liam returns, the body has disappeared. Da, da, da. And so as a writer, you think of these wonderful ideas, and then you go, oh, okay, what happens next? And as a writer, that's the tough bit, is working out what happens next. Now, as a plotter, and we'll be talking about plotting and pantsing next week, and Jack will be joining us for that, which will be great. And it's, if you're plotting, you've got time to think that out. And you have really when you're pantsing, unless you've got a deadline to work to, publisher's deadline, or you've put your book up for pre-order, which has happened to me once. And then you've got to work out what has happened to that body. And thankfully I did, and it's in the book. And so it's taking an ordinary situation. So in this case for After Jessica, I found this, and it was in a newspaper. It was just a little story of this woman in Ipswich who had decided to do the right thing, and it cost her life. That is right at the beginning. So not particularly plot spoiling, it's then what happens. So what if she had a life that her brother knew nothing about? And that's then gives you the rest of the story. So I hope that helps. See you next week.